started going out. And I've got that book at home somewhere too. I don't know where it is anymore, but it was great. But the other thing I think that important thing, because I've been thinking about this a lot, is that the draft, conscription, selective service, whatever you want to call it, the citizen soldier has been involved in just about every conflict since the Civil War.
Right.
And I think it's important to know that the contribution that the drafted citizen soldiers, Marines, Navy, have done. And I had an uncle who was drafted in the First World War. He was gassed. My brother was drafted in the Second World War. He survived. He was 82nd Airborne, all through Europe. Fortunately, he survived. Korea, I didn't have to go, fortunately, but we had drafted men over there in the Marine Corps. We also had drafted men in the Marine Corps in Vietnam. So, I mean, throughout this whole thing, it's not just the volunteers, it's also the draftees, the citizen soldiers that have made a big thing. And I was going to look it up on the internet, but I didn't. Then I was curious about how many, like in the Second World War, what percentage were draftees? Because there was something like, how many million men were...
Well, and so many people enlisted, too, because they didn't want to be drafted.
Exactly,
So
exactly, they did.
A little different thing.
Right,
Too.
that's right, a lot of them did that.
Right.
Or they went in because they were in trouble with the law.
Yeah, right.
Some of them did that, too.
So what did you get out of this whole experience?
What did I get out of it?
Yes.
Well, I guess what I got out of it is I can survive. I can survive almost anything. And I also have gotten out of it, and my generation, and perhaps your generation too, were extremely patriotic. Had they said to me, "You're going to Korea," I would have gone. I wouldn't have gone to Canada. I wouldn't have done anything, whatever, if they said I had to do it, I would do it. Whatever they said I had to do, I did it. And I mean, that is always been kind of a loyalty thing with me. And it goes way back to when I was a kid. My uncles, my dad, my brother.
It was a whole different atmosphere.
Yeah, and yet on the other hand, I can't criticize and won't criticize someone who does not want to go. I mean, that's a personal choice.
Now, you saw some things happen to you just by being...
Fortunate.
Fortunate, right.
Right, fortunate, really.
Yeah.
And
did that translate into when you got out of the service?
I think it did. I think it did. I think, I think you look at opportunities, and you try things and you think, well, this is going to work, or this is going to... Maybe you don't even think about it that much. I mean, you just think, well, this sounds like a great idea at the time. And you go after it and you do it,
Made you more flexible, maybe?
Maybe more flexible, yeah.
Did you go right into art after that, or...?
I went back to school, back to art school, yeah. I had gone to Baldwin Wallace, which was a Methodist college in Berea, Ohio, for 1 year. Then I transferred to the Cleveland Institute of Art for the next 2 years. Then I was drafted in August, after three years basically of college. And then when I came back, I got out in August.
Started in September?
I started in September, right back to art school, and I spent the next 2 years finishing up. And that's the other thing too, is that I don't know what the deal is today on the GI Bill, but I think the GI Bill was probably one of the greatest things this country ever did, and one of the best spent money this government has ever spent. I mean, it's just amazing.
It allowed you to do more than you would have been able to do, probably.
Right. And I'm only sorry that I didn't continue on. I mean, I had basically two more years at college I could have gotten on the GI Bill. But I had gotten married and I wanted to move on with my life. I was already 25 years old.
Right.
I wanted to move on.
So where did you go from there?
Okay.
When did you come here?
I was an industrial design major at the Cleveland Institute of Art. And I was hired by General Motors. I was hired by actually Ford Motor Company International Harvester, and General Motors. General Motors offered me $50 more a month than Ford did. So I said, I'm going with General Motors. You know, in those days, $50 a month seemed like a lot of money, you know. But today it's, you know, it's peanuts. But so upon graduation, I moved to Detroit. Moved my wife to Detroit on 4th of July weekend. I started in June at GM and came up here 4th of July weekend, and Lori was born the following April. Our oldest daughter. And so then I think in a way, having been in the service and having been in the Marine Corps, helped me get the job at GM. Because one of the guys that hired me had been an Air Force officer. And I think that he looked at the record and, you know, and he thought, well, this guy he's got some guts maybe, and he can...
He's been able to do these things.
Yeah, he can do these things, you know. And so I was there for 21 years at the Tech Center in General
Did
Motors.
you come up here in the summers, or what happened?
Right. We would come up here. Actually, what happened is that we, because of Bonnie Staffel, Bill Staffel, we met them at the Ann Arbor Art Fair. Well, my wife is an artist, Sue's an artist, and so I was working, but she was teaching and she was doing the art fairs and stuff, and so she started doing the art fair down there when there was only one show there in Ann Arbor. I don't know if you're familiar with that show down there.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with it? And
There was only one street.
one street, exactly, right.
Instead of 55 or so.
Yeah, and so Bill and Bonnie were from Toledo, and we met them at the art fair, and they bought a place over on 31, and we got to know them pretty well through the art fairs, through that art fair, and we came up once to see, you know, what they had done, and they had done a fantastic job out there on 31, and so then we did the Charlevoix Art Fair many years ago. We did that when people would put their work on a bench. There were no booths. And
One of the first
shows, yeah. And that's, what, 50 years now or something like that? It's been over 50 years. It's
It's
40,
been
40,
42 or
42, something like that, yeah. And so we came up, we did the show, we visited with Bill and Bonnie and saw what they were doing. And Bill was, at that time, Bill was still driving back to Toledo, like every other weekend or something like that, you know. He would come up, and I thought, wow, that's really a commitment, you know,
Right.
because Bonnie was up here full-time and he was coming back and forth from his job.
It's a long commute.
A long commute, it's further than Detroit.
Right.
And so then we came up, we did the show several times, and we came up in it was late 60s, we were doing a show here, and no, we were having a show in Royal Oak at a gallery, and I had saved a week of my vacation to finish up with the framing and everything else that had to be done before the show. And we were ahead of schedule, so it was in October, so we decided we would come up to Charlevoix just to get away. And it was in October, came up, I think it was a Friday, beautiful day. Took the kids were real little. We were at the Weather Vane, or one of them over here. Lodge, maybe it was a lodge. And it was a beautiful day. The next day, it was like, boom, ice and snow, you know, everything icy and snow. And I said, oh, geez, you know. So then we went out to, there used to be United Farm. United Farm was the kind of the low-end sales. Do you remember that? You remember that? It was the low-end sales. They would sell farms and, you know, small plots and stuff like that. And so we went out to this office, which was right across from the airport. There was a little, kind of a little A-frame house there. Do you remember that?
No, I'm just listening.
Oh, and we went in there and we talked to the guy, and he showed us the Grange Hall that we own. We own the Farmers Grange Hall out on Marion Center Road. He showed us the building. And we said, okay. So he took us around and showed us other properties and stuff. And there was only 3 acres with the building. And I said, well, big man, big deal. I want acreage. I don't want just 3 acres. I got to have a lot of acres. So we looked at farms way over near where Russ's farm is now, on Atwood Road. And we didn't even go in the building. We just drove by it, and he said, there's 3 acres here, it's for sale for so much. And I said, well, we won't even look at it. We didn't even go inside the building. And then the next time we came up, which was, I don't know, maybe a year and a half later, they had it with 15 acres. And by that time, we had kind of mellowed out on stuff, and we said, well, let's take a look at the building anyway, So we went out there, and we opened that front door, and you know what that room looks like when, when you open up that second door, and it was a giant hall. It was just a giant hall with nothing in it except the old big lights, like they used to have in schools. There was about 3 or 4 on each side hanging down from the ceiling. The ceiling was old cedar plaster, lath and plaster, falling down. The windows were all boarded with wood and doors. No windows. Everything was smashed. No well. No septic tank.
It was a shell.
A shell. No heating plant.
Right.
And all they had was a hole, and they had a stovepipe hung on wires. Because, in the wintertime, if they had a meeting, they would go and they would get the cook stove or the stove started, and that would heat it enough that they could have their dances and their bingo parties, which they did have at one time. And so that was an abandoned building, basically. For 13 years it had been abandoned when we got it. And so we said, okay, we'll buy it. And we gave the guy $100 to hold it. Went back to Detroit, put it on a land contract. And the following Monday, somebody saw it in the catalog, because it was in the catalog, came up and wanted to buy it, and the guy said, the guy honored it. He said, no, it's already been sold. I've got this money, from this guy in Detroit, and I have to honor what he's, asked for. So he said, okay. So we got it, and then we started paying on it. We would come up in the summertime. I would bring Sue and the kids up in June, and then I would commute back and forth on weekends. And then in late August, I'd come and bring them and take them back downstate. But I would, get a couple of weekends, and then I would I got a month's vacation, so I'd take the whole month of August off if I could. Couldn't always do it because sometimes projects would stop that. But that worked out pretty well for quite a few years.
Did you have a house there, or?
We're in Pleasant Ridge? Well, we had a big house down there, yeah.
No, but up here.
Where did you stay?
Oh, no, we stayed in the Grange Hall.
Oh, okay.
We stayed, because we had fixed it up by that time.
Okay.
We had a well put in,
All right.
septic tank. We put in a furnace, oil furnace. We put all the windows in. We had Wojans. I traded with Wojans. I did artwork for them, and I did their brochure. One of their first brochures I did for them.
That's neat.
And then that paid for the windows, so we got the windows. Then I had a new roof put on by Guy Smith. Do you remember Guy Smith?
I don't remember.
He's
that.
passed away, but anyway, that roof cost me, I remember this to this day, it cost me $800. It was an asphalt, shingle type of thing. A couple of years ago, I had it redone. $10,000. I mean, you're talking about, yeah, right. That's what we call, what would it be? Inflation or something, I don't know. But anyway, then, so we would bring the kids back, and our daughter Lori was at Oakland Community College, and she decided she wanted to go to art school in Cleveland. So she applied, she got in, she moved to Cleveland and lived with Grandma, my wife's mother, and went to art school, 5 years in Cleveland. And so after that, I said, well, you know, and we were not real happy with the school district we were in, because the school district was going through some real, with the government, they were out of, what do we call that? I can't remember. It was out of sync with whatever, and they couldn't, they were holding back government money from the school district, Ferndale School District. And so we said, okay, Laurie's in Cleveland, we'll bring the two boys. We brought the two boys up, put them in Charlevoix schools. And that was in '74. '74, Sue moved up here with the two boys. I stayed in Detroit, and I worked for 2 more years. And then after that, I said, you know, something's got to give here, you know. Either you're coming back, we're moving out of our area into, say, Rochester or something like that, because we, at that time, we owned property in Rochester. And I said, you know, either you come back and we'll move to Rochester, or I'm coming back up here. And by that time, I was a little bit kind of filled up with General Motors. I'd had it for 21 years, and it was a good job.
So what did you do here, once you got here?
Once I got here?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll tell you, kind of scratched my head, look for the quarters in the sofa. You know, the money in the sofa. In the wintertime, right about this time of year, you're going, let's see now, where's the money? I know some money slipped down in there. Well, what I did was, when I came up here, I did some advertising. I did, like I said, I did brochures for Wojan's Windows, Kilwin Chocolates. I did a lot of work for Kilwin Chocolates. Set up, I did their, the layout for their brochures, directed the photography for all of the setups with the candy, all the candy. That was kind of fun. And then also did, you know, paintings, did art fairs, did shows.
This is when you're artistic.
Did more. Well, basically, yeah, basically, because at General Motors I was a designer.
Right.
So I drew. I was drawing all the time.
Yep.
Except after a few years I wasn't drawing anymore, I was management. And the only way you make any money is you got to get yourself in management, right? So you get promoted into management, then you're dealing with people. Right, you're dealing with people, you're not drawing, you're not designing, you're dealing with people and people problems.
So once you got up here, you were able to do that again?
I was able to, had to do it.
Right.
Had to do it. Because Sue and I then, you know, we did the art fairs. And we still do them. We still do them. And it's, you know, you touch more people probably in the summer than you would any other way through the art fairs. I mean, just literally thousands of people, you see. And if you've been to the Ann Arbor one, you know what that's like. The Ann Arbor show is just, it's amazing. We did that for 26 years.
Do you still go down and do that one?
No, we stopped about probably 15, 18 years ago. We quit.
Oh.
We just, it was crazy. I mean, it was just.
It's got to be so huge.
Well, you become delirious after 4 days.
Yeah.
I mean, you're in the sun.
Sure.
And you got all these people talking to you, and people are going by, you know, and just, and the hours are long, the food is lousy, and you always have at least one day of bad weather where everything, you know, it rains, you lose your paintings because everything gets wet, or your pottery gets blown over. And we've been through all those in various stages.
So, did you really choose Charlevoix as being a place, and have you been happy with that choice?
Oh, yeah.
And what is it about this area that you really like?
Well, we were able, number one, we had the building, okay? We were able to set up a studio. So we have all of our ceramic studio there and our painting studio there. We have an etching press there, a giant etching press. I've probably got more equipment than most art schools do. I mean, you've been there, you know what we have. Yeah, really. And then we built another building in the back. We added on to the back for a showroom on the main building, and then we built a pole barn building for all the ceramics, because we wanted to get the ceramics out of the main building. Because when we first were there, we did all the ceramics in the main building, in the basement area of this building. And we wanted to get all that clay, dust, and all that other stuff out of that building into another building.
So all this is kind of like, goes back to your Quonset hut when you started.
Yeah, it's right. I never got out of it, did I? I'm right back where I started from. That's what you call senile or something. Is it senile or?
Well, I think one of the remarkable things about both you and Sue, that you've been able to make a living as artists in northern Michigan.
Yeah. But I think it's interesting though too, is that we take our work out
Yes,
of the Charlotte area.
yes.
I love the customers I have here, the clients I have here. We've done a lot of tile installations in homes, in condos and homes and everything else, all over this area. Harbor Springs, Petoskey, Charlevoix. But we still have to take our work out, and always have, because that still is the thing that it maintains us. I mean, it really does. And I think they help each other, because we get orders from people through email and stuff like that during the year. Not as many as we wish we had right now. It's kind of quiet right now. But, we've met people, and that's the other thing about it too, is that we have met so many people in our 50 years of doing artwork that we never would have met. You mentioned Julie and Peter Cummings. We met them because of the art thing.
Yeah.
And they're just the nicest couple. Nice
So
people.
kind of give me an overview of what you feel about art in general. in
What do
your
I
life.
feel about it in general?
Yeah.
It's a great adventure. It's a wonderful adventure. And I'll tell you, I would hope that the schools would not diminish the art programs, music, the graphic arts, performing arts, literary arts, all the arts, because it's so important. It's so important. I mean, not everybody learns sitting behind a computer. I mean, it's the hands-on. It's the hands-on with the heart and the brain. And it's so important to be able to make something and to be able to look at it and say, I made that. It's wonderful. Somebody else might say, geez, it's awful, but you made it, and you've got it. It's concrete. You've got it.
So you're excited about getting up every day. Yeah.
Every day.
Right.
In fact, my wife says, she said, you're a workaholic. And I said, no, I'm not. I said, I just, I like what I'm doing, and I hopefully, I'm going to be 79 this month, okay? I hope I have another 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
I really do. And I think, I feel great,
Yep.
and, and I think,
Keeps you young forever.
oh,
Yeah.
I think so. And, we've had opportunities. In 1984, we went to Japan. We were there a full month because of someone we met through the arts. And we met this woman in Detroit, way back when we used to do the shows in Detroit. And her husband ended up an executive for Nissan. And he was transferred, he's an American, but he was transferred back to Japan. And we went, they said, come on over. We went over, we stayed with them in Tokyo, and then we went to all the
Sure. All that.
pottery sites,
Yeah.
the schools, the museums throughout Japan, by bullet train, by Mercedes taxis, by you name it.
Right.
And we saw individual artists. We saw an old man on the side of one of these hills over there with his son. He was probably 85 years old, and he was considered a national treasure. At the age of 55, he was a businessman. At the age of 55, he said, I'm chucking it all. And he went into pottery, and he became famous. And he had this wonderful place. We had to drive up this hillside to get there, and he had a kill that was, it went up the hill. It was one of those hillside hills where you start the thing, the wood at the bottom, and it goes up chamber-wise up the hill. And he had a museum there, or no, he had a showroom there, and we had a tea ceremony with him. And we met another woman who was 40 years old and was having her first show in a department store in downtown Tokyo. And you say that to somebody and they think, oh, the poor woman in a department store. But those department stores are unbelievable. I mean, they had floors, literally floors, full of pottery. I mean, they have so many various areas, and every area has their own clay, their own style of pottery, their own glazes, And this woman did dolls, wonderful dolls, and they weren't porcelain. But what she did was, she had a crew, and they made these molds, and they made these faces and figures in red clay. And then they put about 20 coats of white acrylic, rubbing down each coat. And when you saw it, it looked like porcelain.
Wow.
And then they were dressed.
Right.
And I mean, she would do figures about like this. And she had about, I don't know how many, 50 in this show. Because we went to her studio first, and she, through a friend of ours that we were with, who speaks Japanese, said, well, I'm having a show, my first show in Tokyo, so would you come to my opening? So we went to the opening. And it was real funny. She was all dressed up, and she told us through this friend of ours in Japanese that this is much harder than doing the artwork. Having to be here all week, dressed up, talking to people about my artwork.
The selling.
You know, yeah, really, yeah.
I'd rather just do the artwork.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming in.